So we are down here in Massachusetts. We got Nick Campagna coming down. And who'd you bring with you, Nick?
We got Ace. He's fishing in the pond right now, though.
Yeah, Ace just chased an owl out of that pond. And we're going to switch it up and look for some whitetail antlers. How many sheds do you find this year in moose?
Oh, I gotta be like 61 now, I think.
61. You're not done yet, are you?
No. I found most of those this winter, and then it melted a little bit, and I have a couple places I look down low, and, when it first starts melting, but we got dumped on, and we're going to get dumped on again, so it's going to be a minute.
I was just at the spring thaw talking to those guys, and they've got so much snow because they had that storm come through too.
Yeah.
So, I guess you can shed hunt up till June in Maine, huh?
Oh, yeah. A lot of guys will go till Memorial Day weekend usually. Once it gets green, it's not the green so much when you have a dog, but when the bugs come out and you're wearing a bug net and 80 degrees, not that much fun.
Yeah. The only bugs we got to worry about are ticks. I just had 2 on me, but we're in a new spot. I've never been here. Nick's obviously never been here, but we've got a big mountain, a couple of draws, some intermittent laurel, and we're just going to go up and see if, first we'll see if Ace can find any deer antlers. We're going to find something ourselves, I hope, but maybe Ace can find a deer antler too.
Yeah, we'll see. I haven't literally done anything with a deer antler with him, so I try to focus on moose because that's what I look for mostly with the dog, and then once they get good with that, I'll start playing with the deer antler. When I had Ruger, we went to South Dakota and Adirondacks, and he found deer antlers in Maine when we were looking for moose antlers, bucks that never went to town. So they'll find them, but I feel like whatever you focus on primarily is what they're going to find.
Is it a different smell, a different training for the deer than the moose? Is that why? Or?
Yeah, and just like you don't see a lot of guys training dogs for elk antlers either, but I found a big set of elk antlers in Pennsylvania. Elk, moose, and deer all smell different, and subsequently the antlers smell different too. So, I don't know. He'll find them, I'm sure.
We'll get into we'll come down and hopefully we'll have some sheds, but no promises. And we'll talk about how you train your dogs and what goes into shed hunting with a dog. And then you're gonna do a seminar at Huntstock on shed hunting with dogs, right?
Yep. Yeah, it should be fun. Hopefully he'll pick up some big ones this spring and we can bring them down, have a little show and tell.
Yeah. We might do a shed stock again this year, but still don't know. But if we do one, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Come down and bring your whole display. If you're not still shed hunting by that time. I think we might do it first week in June or end of May if we end up doing it. But let's pop into the woods, huh?
Yeah, let's go for a hike.
All right. This episode, I sit down with Nick Campagna. He came down from Vermont and down in Massachusetts. We went into a new piece I'd never been to and went out looking for some whitetail sheds. Nick has found quite a few moose antlers already, but the season hasn't even really kicked off. I think he's up over 60 moose antlers at the time of this podcast. And he's a big-time shed hunter. He lives for it. He's a great hunter as well, but he lives for shed hunting. He's got dogs that help him out. He likes to train his dogs for helping to find shed antlers, and we just go through a little bit of what that process is like. If you want to train your dog for shed hunting, it's not rocket science. There's a lot of positive reinforcement and just putting miles in and boots on the ground and getting your dog excited about finding antlers, and he's just done a tremendous job with his dogs. Ruger, who was his first one, who just passed away last year. We go through some of his stats, and now he's got a new dog that he's been bringing out, Ace, to look for moose sheds with him. And I think last year was his first year with him, and he's excited about getting into the real good moose hunting time after all the snow melts in the North Country. So, we talk just a lot about shed hunting. We talk a little bit about hunting as well, about what his season was like last year. He was in on a hunt with Jeremy Ballantyne in Vermont, a moose hunt, archery hunt. And Jeremy killed a giant bull, so we talk a little bit about that. And then we put a lot of miles on the ground. I think we did 14 miles this day, 12 to 14, something like that. Unfortunately, we didn't find any sheds, but that's how it goes sometimes. But Without further ado, let's get into it now. Here is Nick Campagna. All right, well, we were going to go to the top and try to get a good backdrop, but gate's not open, so we're doing it in the parking lot.
Yeah, they're trying to keep all the shed hunters out.
Yeah. There's going to be some trucks going by, though, it seems like. But sitting here with Nick Campagna, came down to Massachusetts, do some shed hunting, brought his dog with him, and really I just kind of want to pick your brain a little bit on shed hunting with a dog and what goes into training them and kind of places that you go. How long you been doing that with a dog and training your dogs for moose sheds?
It's been like 12 years, something like that. My original dog, we lost him last fall, and then I've got Ruger, yep. And then I've got Ace now, and he's almost 2. And I got him on purpose because Ruger was getting old and he was slowing down a little bit, and he was still amazing, but he just got smarter. You know, he wouldn't run around as much. He'd just walk right with me, and he'd put his nose up, and he didn't have to do as many miles. He could just use his nose all the time. But now I've got him, and he's kind of a meathead, but you know, a 2-year-old lab, that's kind of what you expect. So.
And what goes into when you first get them? What are the things you're doing with them to get them on the moose antlers or get them ready for moose shed hunting?
So the first thing I do, you know, and you can't always get the pick of the litter, obviously, but I try to have a dog that's got good drive. Coincidentally, I didn't have any choice with Ruger. I wanted a chocolate lab, and he was the only one left in the litter. And I was like, I'll take him. And got lucky and probably got one of the best shed dogs, you know, that's been around here anyways. And then, you know, I had more of a choice with Ace, but I couldn't physically be there to choose because I got him in Maryland from a friend of mine.
Yeah.
So the one thing that was important to me, I told him, I said, I got the pick of the males. The females were spoken for, and I said, I want a dog that just has a lot of drive. And he was like, all right. And he's like, are you sure? You know, and it was kind of like, I might choose unwisely and get a dog that's just wound. And I kind of did, but it's all right. He'll calm down a little with age. And so I just kind of used that to my advantage. I just played fetch with him a ton when he was like little. With
a shed or with a stick or what?
No, with a tennis ball.
Yep.
You know, because you don't want them to, the one thing you don't want is them to injure themselves. You know, a lot of guys will give them a little deer antler or they'll give them a tine off of a moose antler or something. And, you know, if they chase it across the floor and catch that tine in the face, it can make them a little bit hesitant. So I just use a tennis ball, and then eventually I start using an antler, and I try to find something that's smooth, you know, something they're not going to get hurt on. It's not, you don't want to get some little spindly whitetail shed with real sharp points. And then I just kind of toss that around in the house and just kind of play tug of war with it or whatever, you know, try to get them excited about it, you know. And some dogs are really easy, like Ruger was just an absolute psychopath for food. If you mentioned the word treat, he just went ballistic. So to get him to find an antler by telling him he's going to get a treat, it was like the easiest thing in the world. Ace is totally different. He found 40-something moose antlers last spring, which was his first spring. He was a year old, and he'd find an antler, and he'd stand there for like 3 seconds and sniff it, and then run away. So if you weren't watching him, you'd never even know he found it. And it's because he doesn't care at all about treats. He'd be gone from the antler by the time I could get my treat bag out, and I'm like, hey, bud, you don't want this, you know? So it's just all in what that dog, you know, they all have a personality just like us. And so with him, I just get really excited. When he finds something, I go crazy, and I'm like, good boy, you know, and I really praise him up hard, and that seems to be what's best for him.
So with like Ruger, let's say then, if he was a little bit different and he went off and found an antler, would he bark? Would he be yelping? How would you know that if you couldn't see him if he had an antler?
No, neither one of them do that. Ruger, I just got lucky. He was just easy, right? He never got that far from me. You saw Ace this morning. He would get a little farther. Ruger would just kind of walk through the woods with me, and you'd see him put his nose up.
Yeah.
And when he was younger, he had a little more spunk to him, and you'd see him put his nose up, and he'd just kind of zigzag, and a lot of times he'd lose the scent because he'd run by it, and the wind would go the other way or whatever, and he'd come back. He was always real smart, so he would come back and catch the wind again, and once you saw his nose go up, you knew he was on an antler.
And you knew you're close enough anyway that even if he doesn't go right up to it, you can.
Yeah, you could kind of work it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd see it before he would, because I didn't. They sell these like foam antlers, deer antlers, right? Nobody's selling a foam moose antler, but I don't really like that, and the main reason is because a lot of times it ends up being like you're teaching the dog to see the antler. And that's not really what you want.
Yeah.
You want them to smell it, you know what I mean? And eventually they'll realize, like I would see Ruger see the antler and the game's over. He's done smelling. He would just run over to it.
Well, their nose is so much better than their eyesight, and that's the best weapon they have on them. So you want to train them for their nose.
Yeah, he found, I think the farthest away he ever found an antler was like 200 yards away. I mean, just trucking right into the wind. It always seems to be a big antler when they find them a long ways away. But, the other thing, like you were saying, what would he do if he got to an antler?
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of guys' dogs bark and stuff, and that's kind of hard to train, honestly. And, so what he would do is he'd find a 20-pound antler, and he'd try to pick that thing up or try to drag it to me, Anything under 10 pounds, he usually could pick it up. I mean, he was a pretty rugged dog. He was pretty big, and when he was in his prime, he would pick him up, and he'd like have his head up in the air because he was smart enough to know it was easier to hold it if it was just kind of the weight was pushing it further into his mouth. So he'd have his head up in the air with this antler, and he'd crash into shit, and it would be funny to watch. I have some videos of it, but and if he couldn't move it, he would just sit there. And I remember one time in Maine, not too far from Lake Parlin Lodge, actually. We went up. We were driving up 201, and I was like, I just got to get in the woods. I'm like, I can't be driving anymore. I got to go in the woods.
Yeah.
So I just went to a brand new spot. It's kind of down in some low country. And we went up on this hill, and we just started finding antlers everywhere. Nobody had shed hunted it. I was leaving them. I was leaving things that were rotten. And he found one. He took off. We had just found one, and he bailed over the back. And he was in his prime. He was, 3-4 years old, something like that. And he just headed. And I couldn't keep up with him because I had a pack load of antlers, and I'm trying to push through this crap, and I totally lost him. And I stopped, and I went about 100 yards before I was like, all right, I have no idea where he is. And I stood there and stood there and stood there. And pretty soon, it was probably not as long as it felt like. It was probably 2 or 3 minutes. He came running back up the hill, and he stopped like 20 yards away when he saw me. And I'm like, where's the bone? And he turned around and took back off. And I'm like, oh, crap. So I ran after him again. And it was about 50 yards farther down. But, so he was smart. Like, he came back and got me and was like, dude, the antler's down here. Now give me my treat, you know.
What was his best season for sheds?
So the best season that him and I had was 276.
Oh, wow.
It was... I've posted the picture. There's less than 10 whitetail sheds, and there's a set of Pennsylvania elk sheds. But the rest
was that
are
last
all,
year?
Nope.
A couple years ago?
Nope, that was it was the first year of COVID.
Yep.
Because I was like, went to Pennsylvania looking for elk sheds, wasn't even sure if we could get a hotel room, wasn't sure. It was crazy.
So last year, Ace... His first year, what did you say, 40 sheds he found? 40
I think it was 43.
And what about this year so far?
This year so far, I think 3. I don't know. He hasn't been out much.
Okay.
I don't bring him in the winter for the most part. If there's a spot that I know a real big bull dropped and there's not much snow, and I don't think there's a bunch of other bulls in there, I'll bring them. But it just really, bringing the dog in the winter, same thing for deer. If I looked for deer, you're just going to push them out. And if I'm looking for moose antlers in the winter and I don't have a dog, I basically dress like I dress when I'm deer hunting.
Yeah.
And I just sneak through an area. And a lot of times...
You're just kind of scouting, right?
Yeah, and if you bump them just when you're by yourself with no dog, they're only going to go a couple 100 yards maybe. You know, they don't go that far. You bump them with a dog. I've had guys come by my cameras with dogs and bump them, and then I've ended up finding the antlers to those bulls that they bumped 3 miles from where they were. Yeah. So they just don't like that. You know, moose smell the dog, they see the dog, that's danger, right? They don't know the difference between a yellow lab and a coyote. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me, like I'm in whitetail shed mode, and I'm nearing the end of I'm not going to do much shed hunting now, but you still haven't even really begun because the North Country has got a lot of snow still.
Oh yeah, we just got that dump of snow there a week ago, and we're going to get more here this week sometime. So it'll probably be the 1st of May before it's really good. And I think the plan, a bunch of us, you know, buddies, I think we're going to get together, do some shed hunting, but I think we're also going to bring the turkey guns and try to blast some birds first thing in the morning and then go pick up antlers. Fun. Yeah. That's the plan, I think, this spring.
So he's found 3 this year, but how many have you found so far?
We're around 60 something. I have a little, just last year I started keeping track. I got a little notebook and I put the place that I went, and obviously that gets kept in a safe, but I jot them down, you know, and it's helpful. It's, you know, I put everything's on Onyx, every track I do, every antler I find, but I thought the journal would be kind of neat too, because that's all that's in there is shed hunting stuff. So
that'll be something you'll look at when you're 70 and pass on to your kids and stuff if you have kids. I don't know if you're going to end up having kids or not.
Oh yeah, I have one now.
You have kids?
Yeah, I got Blake's he'll be 8 almost this. Well, yeah, today's the 1st.
Oh, I didn't know you had kids.
April Fools. Yeah, so Blake turns 8 this month, and yeah, someday he'll be able to have that. You know, like one of my favorite people to talk to about shed hunting is Connecticut Carl.
Yeah.
You know, I met him way up north in Moose Country, and you know, he drives super slow down the logging roads, and we'd always buzz by him, you know, and we'd be back to camp and unload all our antlers, and then he'd just be getting to his camp. We'd go see him, and God, he would show us up every time. There'd be 3 of us with dogs, and you know, we'd find some 5 or 6 pound browns, and we'd be like, "Oh, we had a pretty good day," and we'd
You're moving too fast. He's poking through slow.
Gosh, and he doesn't have a pack. Never used a frame pack. He always had his walking stick. Just throw antlers over his shoulder.
What happens if he finds 3 or 4? That's a little tough.
I don't know. He's a tough old dude. And he knows how to find those antlers. That's for sure.
He's awesome.
He shot some wicked bucks in that northern Maine country too. So yeah,
I did that podcast with him down. He's got that trophy room. What's so impressive about his trophy room is I don't think he started seriously hunting until he was 45, 50, you know, after he had a divorce. Then he was in the woods all the time, and all the animals on his wall, I think, was like after age 40, the ones he had there.
Yeah.
Super impressive.
Yeah, he's really good in the woods. We'd go there and I'd just pick his brain and try to get stories out of him, you know, and of course we were everywhere in that country, and I would run into where his truck was parked and stuff, you know, and we would never go in there because I was like, Carl's just a good dude, you know, you just don't do that to your buddies. So
that reminds me, he called me the other day. I think he might have left me a voicemail. I haven't got to it yet, but Carl, I'm going to get to your voicemail and I'm going to call you right back if you're watching this.
Yeah.
So have you found any whitetail antlers this year yet?
This year?
Because we're gonna try to find one this afternoon.
I know. This morning was amateur hour.
Yeah.
There was a couple of little spots where I was like, ooh, this could be good, you know, and I don't look for deer antlers often. I've found quite a few in the places where there's more deer, obviously, and I accidentally find them looking for moose sometimes, but you know, it definitely I was kind of scratching my head this morning, like, is there so many guys looking down here that there's no old ones left, or do they just get chewed up or buried in oak leaves? Or
well, we're in Pat Burns' area, and so he goes through. He hasn't gone through that area we were this morning yet, but between me, you, and Pat, we put on probably 15 or 16 miles and nothing. I mean, there was some sign, but it wasn't the great sign I'm used to seeing. So hopefully, where we go this afternoon.
Well, yeah, and just knowing that Pat likes to go here. I was assuming I'd find an 80-inch antler laying somewhere.
You find some good ones around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, it's not big woods like North Maine, but we're in a big chunk here. So there's not a lot of guys that work for it where we were this morning.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the kind of country where if you have a dog that's trained for it, I haven't trained Ace for deer sheds. Once he gets real good on the moose, I'll start working him into it, but they don't miss a big antler.
Yeah.
Those dogs are pretty wise. I think Ruger found a 70-inch whitetail shed before I ever even used the whitetail shed to train him. So they're not dumb. They're pretty smart.
Now, so once you get past early on stages, getting them fetching, getting them chewing on a little antler, do you have them sniffing the pedicles of moose antlers or anything? Like, what goes into really training them on the scent?
You just got to bring them. They just got to be in the woods, you
Yep.
know. And then if you find one, just don't walk over to it.
Yep.
Let them find it, and then when they find it, you really got to praise them and let them know that they did well. And that's what not every time, but a lot of people will ask me about training a dog and everything, and I'm like, listen, if you don't know anything about deer or you don't know anything about moose and you don't have a good place to go, you're probably not going to find that many more antlers, because the dog can't find an antler if it's not there.
Yeah.
So, there's a select few guys that I know that find a lot more antlers with dogs than other guys, and it's because they know where to bring the dog. And if you get in the right spot, the dog's usually going to find. I know people that have dogs that aren't shed dogs, and they bring them with them when they go just because they like having a hiking buddy, and those dogs will find antlers sometimes. So
it's more just like positive reinforcement then. Just getting them accustomed to liking to get praised or liking to get the treat, and just do that over and over again. So you kind of got to know what you're doing in the beginning.
Oh, definitely.
To train a good shed dog. There's no dog that's born a shed dog. You got to make them feel good about it.
And that's where I got really lucky with Ruger, because when I got him, I was just starting to figure it out, but I was full of piss and vinegar, and being in the military, I could hike like nobody's business. So I was just hiking every place I could find and just learning as I went. And I don't think he missed too many antlers. So we were finding stuff, and I was figuring it out all the time. And we doubled our numbers every year for the first couple of years.
It's like a compounding factor, it seems like, because you just, the more they do it, it's just going to compound. He's going to be addicted to going to try to get that praise from you.
Oh yeah, and funny thing is, the better he got, the worse I got.
Yeah.
I started noticing that I was walking right by antlers because the wind was wrong, so he didn't smell it. And I'm like, man, I should probably start. But he was so good, I didn't even hardly look anymore.
Yeah.
I was just walking around looking for sign and letting him find all the antlers. And yeah, I did. I had a little bit of a moment there one spring where I was like, all right, I should probably look.
Yeah.
It was like a 16 or 17 pound antler, and the wind was blowing the other way, and I almost walked right by the thing, and I was like, oh, right, he's not gonna smell it if the wind's going the wrong way.
You got to start rewarding yourself too.
Yeah. Well, we'd usually mix a drink at the end of the day or something. But
does he? Do your dogs smell deadheads and carcasses a lot too, and bring you right to them?
Oh yeah. He found. One spring in Maine, we found a whole bunch of deadheads. I think we found 5
moose deadheads.
And I took 3 out and had to get a tag, and really more of a hassle than it's worth unless it's a good one. One of them, I think, was shot and was like a 55-inch bull, fresh. I think that one was actually, that video is going on YouTube tonight. But I think he got shot. He was kind of down in a little hole there. Probably got shot back, liver, guts or something, and he went and laid down by the stream. And then 2 days later, I found one. It was, even though it was broken, it was still 52 inches, but he had one antler was broke right off above the brow. Mm-hmm. And it was all rubbed smooth where he broke it. So he got in a fight, broke his palm off, kept rubbing trees, smoothed it off, and then you could see where he died. It was clear as day that he got killed, because he was right in a little fur patch, and all the fur, it looked like a meteor hit right in the middle of the fur. All the fur was just laid flat, so you could see he just got rolled right over. The bull just pushed him right over, and he must have gored him, because he only had one good side. The other side was broke off, so he got turned around, and So that, I guess he liked to fight and it got him in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Ruger found that from like 300 yards away. I thought he was just being dumb. I'm like, because it wasn't really a good spot. We had gone into this place, hiked in, and we were coming out, and I was just cutting across through the hardwoods, just trying to get back to the truck as quick as I could. And he just angled and started heading down, and I'm like, well, the wind's coming that way. So I just kept walking, and yeah, he came to that deadhead.
Now they got to weigh 50, 60, 70 pounds getting a deadhead out of there.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, neither one of those had real heavy antlers. I think that 55-incher, those were probably 15-pound antlers. So there's 30, and then the skull, for the fresh skull, was probably, I don't know, it still had meat and crap on it, but it was at least probably 10 with all that junk on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you found an incredible antler this year, right? Your best yet. What was the story on that?
Yeah. So I was just poking around usual spots. Didn't really know of any. I knew of one good bull that I found the set to last year, and I hadn't been in there yet. I was kind of holding out a little bit, and there is some other guys that hit that spot, so I was like, it's a timing thing, right? And a friend of mine was like, man, or I think he sent me a picture, and I was like, where's all the snow? And he's like, oh, we have way less snow than you have. And I'd been over there deer hunting a little bit in the past few years, and I'd seen some good bulls. And this fall I saw just a giant. And I was like, man, I think, like when you're deer hunting and they just turn and they go, you're like, how big was he, you know? And I'm like, I think that bull was mega. And so when you know it, I'm like, I can't get over there for a couple days. And I knew it was going to snow a little bit, and it did, but it didn't snow too much. And I get over there. Nobody's been in the road. Get on the snow machine. Right, this is, in Maine. And not way up north, but a decent ways up. And those mountains got hit pretty hard in central and western Maine with all that flooding and stuff. And so I come to a big washout, and I'm like, well, no wonder nobody drove in here, and I was able to get down around the bottom of it with my snowmobile, and because it was a few miles, and I get out to the end, and I walk up in there, and I'm like, nah, I don't, like, it doesn't look that good, and I come up on this little bench, and I see 5 bulls, and they're all packing, and they're all like, 45 to 50-inch bulls. They're not great big bulls, but they're decent bulls, and I'm like, yeah, this was probably a waste of time. And I make a loop, and I'm cutting back across, and I come to like a little rodeo grounds where they've messed all around, and there's rubs and stuff. And I'm like, man, some of these rubs are older. There was bulls here before, and I'm like, oh, it's probably just them. And I go through, there's a little section where it's like, a little corn maze of fir trees there, and I'm kind of dipping through that, full of beds. And I go into this big branch, and it opens up, and laying in the wide open is this antler, and I'm like, whoa, like that's a good one, And my first thought was like, that's like a 70-inch antler. That's like a 20-pound antler. And so I'm like videoing, and I'm walking over there, and as I'm like videoing and getting closer, I'm like, man, that antler's big. That's big antler, It's like, it's thick. Like even the tines look heavy. And so I stood there for a minute, and then I was like, I got to stop looking at this thing, and I actually had a buddy with me, and I called him, and because that's the crazy part is we actually have service in there. And so I called him, and I'm like, hey, you should come up, help me find this. And we gridded all around. We found the match, and he's high 60s width, he's just a giant. And
wow.
And my side, he videoed me picking up my side and everything, and my side ended up weighing, I put it by the fire, by the wood stove for a day, because we didn't even have a scale. And we ended up borrowing a scale from somebody. So after sitting by the wood stove for a day, all dried out, it was 26 pounds.
Wow, man.
Which is ridiculous. My next biggest one, brown, was 22 pounds. And it was 80 and 3/8 inches.
Wow.
Which has been, I set a goal a few years ago to find an 80-inch antler. And I'm good friends with, John Moulton, probably.
Yep. Yeah.
Good friends with John, and, he kind of was like, I don't know. Good luck, like that's
Has he found an 80-incher?
I don't think so. He's found a lot of big ones. I don't know that it's kind of just that magical thing. It's like, yesterday was Easter. It's like that golden Easter egg. It's because they got to have everything. They got to have a long palm. They got to have a wide palm. Usually they got to have a lot of points. It really is just, it's a genetic thing.
What do you think that would be for a deer shed, if you had to compare that to finding a deer shed in the north? Like, is that like a 70-inch shed, an 80-inch shed?
Well, I think in Maine there's like 7 moose antlers ever over 80 inches.
Wow.
I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. Don't quote me, but it's very few. So
it's like finding an 80-inch whitetail.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if you started looking at the shed books from the Northeast, of course, the Northeast doesn't even have the biggest whitetails really, but yeah, I don't know. If you started looking at a typical whitetail shed, it would be, because if you put those 2 antlers together, the one side scores a little less.
So did your buddy find the other one?
He found the other one, yeah. And he was like, I don't feel good about it. He's like, I don't even really want to help you look. And I was like, yeah, you're going to come help me look. I was like, he's like, well, it's yours. He goes, even if I find it, it's yours. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And he found it.
Just like any sheds you find down here are mine.
Yeah. So he found it, and I'm like, you just keep it. I'm like, because that's his biggest antler by a lot. And I'm like, just keep it. It's like, if I really was going to be selfish and just want it, I would have never asked him to come up. So he was pumped, and you put those 2 antlers together with the estimated spread. I think I only gave him an estimated spread of like 65 or something. But the bull's like 220, which is like basically a state record anywhere in the Northeast. And Canada moose, the record books, I think the biggest ones are Nova Scotia and British Columbia, and they're right there.
That's awesome. Jeez, man. Do you think that was the one you saw deer hunting?
I'm not sure. He's got his palm is kind of folded, and I don't remember seeing the folded palm, but it's only folded from really like halfway up back, and then when, the way they sit on their head, and those things are so heavy.
Yeah.
His antlers are so heavy that they sag, and they're kind of laid flat, so when they're on his head, it would be tough to tell. He's got huge brows, and then all these big points and wide palms above that, so it's really tough to tell. I would assume it is, but I probably shouldn't assume, because if there's one that big there could be another one.
So that was one thing I was going to say is, do moose bachelor up in age groups like deer do? Is like those 5 bulls you came up on that were younger, smaller bulls, and they were all still holding. Dude, was that bull separated from that group, you think? Or you think he's kind of bachelored in with them but keeps a little distance? Because he wasn't too far from them, right?
Yeah, so there was... we only found 2 bulls in there. We got the giant set, and then my buddy found a antler from an ancient bull. This just this club thing.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming those 2 bulls were together, 2 big old bulls.
Yeah.
And then this other group of 5 was separate.
Yeah.
And I've found usually the bigger bulls, you start getting those bulls that have those 65, 70-inch antlers and up, and they're 17, 18 or more pounds a side. Those guys are usually in smaller groups. There'll be like 2 of them together, or 3 maybe. And then those 50-inch bulls, 40-inch bulls, you'll go into a cut and find a bunch of those guys hanging around together. And then, you might have another spot where there's a bunch of forks and 30-inch bulls and stuff like that. But
do you find that the mature bulls, because I see it with whitetails, that the bigger antlered older deer kind of drop earlier than the 2 and 3 year old bucks? They're dropping their antlers, so that one was dropped, the other ones were all holding. Do you see that with moose a lot?
I do, but that's kind of the weird thing is, for everybody always says that with the moose, they're dropping during deer season and they're dropping in December, and they do. Guys find them all the time. I rarely find brown.
Well, their rut's over earlier, so you'd think they would drop a little earlier.
Yeah, and their testosterone drops, and they're they have no use for them. But the funny thing, like, that antler had only been there for 2 days, maybe.
Yeah. Had blood on the pedicles.
Yeah, it was super bloody. And then I found another big set like a week after that, maybe. and that one side is 76 inches.
Wow.
And 22 pounds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
And not in the same area, kind of the same range, but because obviously after I found that one, I was like, I need to start checking some other places around here, and I started finding some good stuff. But I found his match too, so I got that set. That's a wicked good set. But the funny part is, like, those were super bloody. And well, I found the one antler, and then literally saw the group of 3 bulls, and the bull still had his other antler on. And I went back the next day and tracked him 300 yards and found the antler. So, and that was, for a bull that size, usually you would assume
that they're dropped.
They would be off before then. But that's why it's just, like today, I'm in here, we're, banging around. Well, it's not right here, but where we're banging around there looking for deer sheds. And like, man, there's not that much sign. I don't see a lot of buck rubs. I don't see much for scrapes. But I always tell myself, like, there's no rules. They don't have any rules at all.
Yeah.
The buck can live 364 days in one piece of woods and walk out in somebody's yard and drop an antler. And it's the same thing with the moose. If somebody, there's a lot of guys shed hunting now. If somebody bumps them, they can be in the dumbest spot ever and drop their antlers.
Now, can you guide in that area? Can you bring somebody in there to kill that moose?
Yeah.
Are you going to try to next year?
Yep, that's the plan.
Because you put in, you might draw your own tag, but
that'd be sweet. I wouldn't be upset with it at all.
Yeah.
I might really be obsessed then.
Yeah. But that would be amazing because now that he's in there, that 76 inchers in there, that'd be a great spot to go.
Yeah, they're in the same mountain range, so it would be a lot of fun, especially since we just our group, we've been doing a little more filming and stuff, and Jeremy's archery hunt this past fall.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit too, because
we got some wicked footage, and I think we've got more ideas. So if one of us draws a tag again, we can kind of expand on it. But yeah, that was Vermont, but super fun.
So Jeremy got a tag in Vermont, and were you his guide?
Yeah, I guided him.
Yeah. And you guys had a cameraman.
Yep. Yeah, Jason came up, and he's way more of the techie guy than Jeremy. And of course, Jeremy used to do a lot of it in the past, but he's kind of gotten out of it. And Jeremy knew that area a little bit, but obviously it's my stomping ground. So. And
that's a great bull for Vermont too. What did that thing end up being?
He was 8.5 years old, so it was a nice old mature bull. We got one antler. A friend of mine found one antler from that bull 2 years before.
Yep.
So Jeremy has that now, which is kind of cool. And it was a tough season. We had a giant bull located, and through some difficult situations with other people, and just bulls moving for cows. He was in one spot for a while, and I'm like, we got him nailed down, and he probably bred all those cows and moved.
Yep.
And just trying to, like I said, dodge other people sort of thing. We kind of lost track of him, but we had like 3 other ones that were like good ones. And I didn't even really want to hunt the bull that we shot when we did. We were going to go to another spot, and the wind was kind of, we try to play the wind best we can. It's hard in some of those areas just because of the access and stuff. But I actually told him, because he had a bunch of cameras in there, and he likes that spot where he shot the bull. And I'm like, let's just walk in there. Let's just walk in there and check the camera, because it was early afternoon. It was warm. I mean, Jared's wearing a base layer, like he's you can see in the video. I'm not sure if that part will be in it, right, when we're just walking in there, but he's totally not really into it. You can see that he's like, we're basically scouting.
Yeah.
Because it was just warm, and we're trying to really come up with a plan here, and we get in there, and he's like, yeah, this is there's been a lot of sign right here. This has been a good spot. We check his camera, and there's a nice bull on it. And it was the bull he shot, but from the angle, you couldn't even tell it was that bull. And we could see his palm had a big crack in it, and we're like, yeah, that's a good one. Like, we gotta hunt around in here this afternoon. And so he knows that area real good, and I'd never actually hunted it. So we're sneaking up through, and of course I got my antler, and I'm just tickling the brush and calling and whatever. And right at the same time, Jared and I both notice a cow over to the left. There's like a little open spot where it's just starting to grow up from when they cut, and there's a little dink bull like right behind her, and boy, didn't he just look nervous. And I'm like, maybe he thinks we're a bull, Like, I don't know what's going on. And so I do a little cow whine, and they don't move, and I start raking the brush, and boy, all of a sudden on the other side of us, like almost behind us, we hear this bull grunt, and he came down and took an arrow, and he was close. It was, I don't know what it was, 15 yards or something, but man. It was wicked. We had a hell of a time, and
I can't wait to see. You guys are putting a film together for the film festival, right?
Yep.
Jason's editing that up.
Yep. And there's a lot of moose footage in there, total, not just that bull, but it's Jason's got plenty of time. He got a new computer, and he's all wound right up, and Jared and I are wound up to see how
That's
it
great.
Turns out.
Yeah, so, man, I can't wait to see it.
Oh, we're pretty pumped. Jason got some wicked, shots before the hunt too, scouting and all that. Those guys went up together, and we all tried to get together, but the way life is, Jeremy and I were able to get up there, and it was a lot of fun.
Sweet, man. Well, what do you think? You want to go try to find some whitetail sheds or what?
Yeah, if we can go find a dozen antlers real quick, that'd be...
Let's pop into a spot. Hopefully find where they've been bachelored up, and find a whole slew of them.
Yeah.
That's the goal every time you go out. This year I haven't had a great shed year.
It's not that good.
I haven't done too much, but these are my best set, so that's good. But numbers-wise...
That's okay. Quality over quantity.
Two's the most I found in one day this year, but... A couple years ago, I'd get 7, 6 at a time. Let's go try to find one of them days today.
Yeah, why not? You never know.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep.